Hi, this is Kim Watson. Welcome to a weekly technical review looking at the technicals this week and starting off with the euro dollar, which is continuing. Last week we had another downward week here, which overall it still looks like it's on course for the 105 sort of zone. If it continues breaking like this, it's sort of pulled up a little bit but breaking back down again. Looking quite weak here, and potentially even on a weekly basis, maybe potentially getting oversold. If we look at the dailies situation, again here my overbought oversold inflection point indicator where it's before it got oversold in these levels here back on the 24th, decent bounce back. We're getting towards those sort of that sort of oversold sort of area. Haven't quite got a signal through yet. But on the dailies, but it is looking very much like it's getting that way at least. Now I drew on, if I can zoom, I should get rid of the bottom bit for a moment and zoom in a little bit here. I just drew on this trend line that was sitting across these lows from the 3rd of 12th 2015. So I just put the December 2015 through to the lows here, just as a sort of that's the rising trend, if you like, which looks like it could potentially be broken. Now, from a daily perspective, it was brought to my attention this morning that there's a bit of a Gartley pattern, which there is at these lows on this bar here, but it's not really done too much from it. If it continues breaking through, well, that will wash away the Gartley pattern, and we could be heading down to the lows from last month. Maybe even running down towards the S1. I am looking though that the potential of it, if it starts doing that, if it getting oversold and looking at these prior lows here may come into play as well in terms of some support. There was sort of pivotal area just below that 109 area. So watching for the moment, it looks mostly bearish. As I say, it's is that a potential pivot point here. When I say pivot point, I don't mean as in the technical pivots, but a pivotal area, I should say, of whether if it holds on here and manages a bounce, and tomorrow, next day, perhaps we could be pushing up. But if it closes below this line, well, to me, it stays bearish, and as I said, from a monthly point, from the bigger picture, it looks like we could be heading further south towards that 105 area. Okay, looking at cable got oversold. It moved up quite a reasonable amount on my weeklies here. Never quite got back to the weekly 21 or back in. I've left this regression channel on because so often price gets back into a sort of zone. It's not yet got there, and it's struggling on the weeklies at the moment. Looking at the daily perspective here, it's just sort of really got into this consolidated phase over the last 4 or 5 days. Today, relatively small movement, which will cause us tighter pivots most probably for tomorrow. But to me, again, it's one of those areas where if it breaks down from here, if it starts breaking the lows of the 20th of July there, I've got to really take my sort of slightly biased bullish head off towards and thinking, well, okay, it's going to come back down to the 1.3 potentially to retest that, and maybe even test the ultimate lows there just above, just below the 1.28 area. And certainly, as I say, if it breaks that, well, it's put lower high, and it's got really got to be looking for that potential. Right, okay, that's on the pound. Dollar yen. Well, the yen with the potential. Let's just go to the weeklies first, and you see the movement there. That did get oversold on the inflection point. Overbought, oversold signal here did get oversold properly on the week of the 20th of June, and seen some movement since then. It's sort of had its move, pulled back, pushed up again. Still a bit short of that 21, the weekly 21, which I'd like to see it come in. But there is, oops, 60 minutes. Let's go for dailies even. Be much more. I mean, there's still potential. It's broken some of the trends that have been running across there. I've looked at the shorter term trends from these highs, these lower highs. It's broken that. In fact, I should really pop the absolute I say absolute, but this is the most significant trend line now that we're looking at, running across these highs here. Most significant only because it's the most recent from those two, more, as I say, more significant highs. And you see, we're testing that area, struggling a little bit. The daily 8's holding us up. Again, if we can push back above that, well, then I've become bullish for the continuation side of things, to see if it runs back up to the monthly R1 area and maybe gain some further ground towards eventually the daily 200. Aussie dollar. And the Aussie dollar is a bit of a mess in my book. It's put a weekly bearish pivot swing in. It's, to me, looking pretty weak from where it's sort of sitting in this picture. If it breaks last week's lows, I would be really looking for a continuation to the downside. Now, there is, when you look at the dailies, there is some consideration to be made. The fact that the daily 50 started rolling around, we're getting a little bit of an angle on the 200 there. But realistically, from these daily bars here, I mean, we're just seeing lower highs effectively in the shorter time frames there, and potential for it to continue pushing. Of course, there is the possible support at the daily 50, but if it breaks that, then it gives me a chance to see if we can play right the way down to that 200 and maybe more from an intraday basis, and maybe, as I say, a bit more if you were looking at an end of day basis. But it's putting the higher lows up until now. It's the bigger picture just looks weak to me. Canadian dollar, well, the Canadian dollar is a bit of a funny old one, and we've finally got a break on this, but let's just go back to the weekly, and you can see we've had a break of the weekly wedge here. Now, leading to last week and the earlier part of last week, to me, it looked like, if anything, it had the potential of the continuation. You've got this sort of flag pattern here, and it generally you'd expect it to run off south, but what you've got to do, and we can't ignore it, is look at what's happening with oil at the moment. And oil itself is well, it's putting a bullish flag in, and if anything, it looks like on a weekly basis it's got a bullish flag in. Sorry, but this weekly downward trend could continue heading further off. It just really does look weak at the moment on this. Yes, bull flag on the weekly there, but it's the way it's broken the trend of the movement overall, putting the lower highs in and breaking down towards its OKSS2. I can't at the moment on that basis be bearish on the Canadian dollar. So I have to look at the bullish side of things, preferably at the moment. And you've seen this breaker. I talked about this sort of W bottom that was there, never really came to anything. We've seen lots of different patterns shaping up here. But if anything, it looks like we could well be on for that 200, maybe on, if it breaks that, well, pushing up even further this month. But if anything, it looks relatively bullish. There is a chance from the inflection point indicator it may get a bit of overbought on the bigger time frames, on this daily time frame here. If that comes into play, I'll look at it, but it needs to be into some substantial resistance, and I need to see oil likewise into some great support. So for now, as I say, I have to remain, well, on this picture, I have to look bullish, more bullish at the Canadian dollar, although the pattern it put on from this weekly pattern, well, wasn't looking great. Now it's broken the prior highs, including the high of the week commencing 23rd of May. So, as I say, looks bullish. Looking at the round numbers, maybe 135, etc., for further upside there if it breaks this 133. Okay, that's it for me. News-wise this week, I should say, before I do that, that's it for me. And finally, we've got some news coming out, because we've got Wednesday's the big day, and it'll be interesting to see how we move today. Today's been quite tight range. Tomorrow may be similar, leading into Wednesday's FOMC statement, which should be at 7 p.m. UK time. There is some data out in the morning, which is very key to US. Before that, they were watching the Aussie dollar at 2:30 on the Wednesday morning it's got inflation figures out, so that will be quite a key factor for the Aussie dollar. Wednesday for the pound, the GDP numbers will be coming out, and we'll be seeing what sort of early effects are we seeing of the concern over Brexit, I'd say, because it's not really a Brexit effect because we haven't done it, we haven't exited yet. And then we've got the core durable goods leading into the US in the afternoon. Not massive mover, but can create volatility. But I think it will be quite quiet ahead of the FOMC statement and funds rate. So no expectation of an increase on this particular occasion, as there was previously. It was expected that several increases this year, but we may, within the statement, see it will be really depend on what comes out in that statement, the bullishness or the bearishness. Okay, looking at beyond Wednesday, then Thursday, really little in the way of news, and then Friday, again, there's some possibly big yen data coming out there. It's through the Asian session at 6 o'clock. We have the Bank of Japan outlook report, etc. So we've got the monetary policy in the Asian session, slightly earlier Asian session, before 6 a.m. most likely, UK time. It's always tentative, not a specific time on that. Beyond that, there's a bank conference between 7:45 area expected. Again, volatility on the yen around there, so pre-7, 8 o'clock, our normal sort of trading time, so it could be quite some big moves in the dollar yen. Okay, leading on from that, there's not much else until we've got the US and Canadian advanced GDP. US. The Canadian GDP is a monthly figure, so it has a lot less significance in terms of expectation. So if you're looking at dollar CAD at that point, it's more what's the dollar's going to happen and what's going to happen to the advanced GDP from the US there. So that's due at, as I say, the advanced figure is due at 1:30. And that pretty sums things up through to late Friday evening at 9 p.m. when the markets are relatively closed, when we get the bank stress test. So you can't do anything about it, but we might get some gaps over the weekend. So trade carefully Friday. Right, that really is me done now. I'll wish you a great week. Bye for now.